The courtroom was silent. So silent that I could hear the clock on the wall ticking. Tick, tick, tick. Each second felt like an hour as I stood there with a manila folder in my hands. My palms were sweating. My heart was beating so fast I thought everyone could hear it. Judge Helena Whitmore looked at me over her reading glasses. She was in her 60s, silver hair pulled back tight, and she had a face that had seen every lie, every trick, and every sob story that divorcing couples could throw at her. Nothing surprised her anymore. At least, that's what I thought. "Mr. Thatcher," she said, her voice flat and tired, "you said you have new evidence to present. This is highly irregular at this stage of proceedings." My lawyer, Theron Blackwell, gave me a small nod. We had talked about this moment for weeks. He told me it was risky. He told me that judges don't like surprises. But he also told me that what I had in that folder could change everything. "Yes, Your Honor," I said. My voice cracked a little. I cleared my throat and tried again. "Yes, Your Honor. I have evidence that my wife, Marlo Thatcher, has hidden approximately $800,000 in assets during these divorce proceedings." The courtroom erupted. Marlo's lawyer, a sharp woman named Desdemona Vance, shot up from her chair like someone had lit a fire under her. Marlo herself sat frozen. Her face went pale. The color drained from her cheeks so fast that I thought she might faint. "Objection!" Desdemona shouted. "Your Honor, this is outrageous. Mr. Thatcher cannot simply walk in here and make wild accusations without proper discovery procedures." But I wasn't looking at Desdemona. I wasn't even looking at Marlo. I was looking at Judge Whitmore. And in that moment, I saw something I never expected to see on that stone-cold face of hers. I saw interest. Real interest. She held up her hand to silence Desdemona. "I'll allow it," she said slowly. "Mr. Thatcher, approach the bench and present your evidence." I walked forward. Each step felt like I was walking through quicksand. Behind me, I could feel Marlo's eyes burning into my back. The same eyes that used to look at me with love. The same eyes that cried at our wedding when she said her vows. The same eyes that had lied to me for years. I handed the folder to Judge Whitmore. She opened it. She started reading. And then I saw it. Her eyes widened. Her jaw tightened. She looked up at Marlo, then back at the papers, then back at Marlo again. "Mrs. Thatcher," the judge said, and her voice had changed. It was no longer tired. It was sharp. Dangerous. "Would you care to explain why you have 3 offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands that were not disclosed in your financial affidavit?" And that's when Marlo did something I will never forget for as long as I live. She smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a caught-in-the-act smile. A cold, calculating smile that sent chills down my spine. It was like looking at a stranger. It was like looking at someone I had never known at all. But let me go back to the beginning. Let me tell you how I got here. How a high school math teacher from Columbus, Ohio, ended up standing in a courtroom with evidence that would blow up his entire life. I met Marlo Prescott in the summer of 2014 at a 4th of July barbecue hosted by my college roommate, Stellan. The moment I saw her, I knew I was in trouble. She was beautiful in that effortless way that some women are. Long auburn hair, green eyes that sparkled when she laughed, and a smile that could light up a room. She was wearing a white sundress with little red flowers on it, and I remember thinking she looked like summer itself. She was a financial analyst at a mid-sized firm downtown. Smart. Ambitious. She talked about compound interest and market trends like they were poetry, and even though I barely understood half of what she said, I loved listening to her talk. She had this passion in her voice, this fire that made everything she said sound important. We dated for 2 years. 2 wonderful, perfect years. We went on road trips to national parks. We cooked dinner together every Sunday. She taught me about investing. And I taught her about the beauty of algebra. She used to joke that I was the only person who could make quadratic equations sound romantic. We got married in October 2016. Small ceremony. Her parents flew in from Seattle. My mother cried through the whole thing. We bought a house in the suburbs, a nice 3-bedroom with a backyard perfect for the kids we planned to have. Life was good. Life was really, really good. The first 5 years of our marriage were happy. At least I thought they were. Marlo got promoted twice at her firm. Her salary increased. She started handling bigger accounts, traveling more for work. I was proud of her. She was building something, achieving her dreams, and I was just happy to be along for the ride. But somewhere around year 6, things started to change. It was small things at first. She would come home late and not want to talk about her day. She started keeping her phone face down on the table. She set up a separate home office and kept the door locked when she was working. When I asked about it, she would say it was just work stress, client confidentiality. Nothing to worry about. And I believed her. God help me. I believed every word. The real trouble started in January 2023. That's when Marlo came home one evening, sat me down at the kitchen table, and told me she wanted a divorce. I remember staring at her like she had spoken a foreign language. Divorce? We hadn't even been fighting. Sure, we had grown a little distant, but what married couple doesn't after 7 years? I thought we were just in a rut. I thought we would work through it. "I'm not happy, Corbin," she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Like she had rehearsed this speech 100 times. "I haven't been happy for a long time. I think we want different things out of life." I asked her if there was someone else. She said no. I asked her if we could try counseling. She said it was too late for that. I asked her what I had done wrong. She just shook her head and said, "You didn't do anything wrong. We just grew apart." And that was it. After 7 years of marriage, after building a life together, after all the promises and dreams, she was done. Just like that. The divorce proceedings started in March. Marlo had already hired Desdemona Vance, one of the most aggressive divorce attorneys in the city. I hired Theron Blackwell, a guy I found through a recommendation from a colleague at the high school. He wasn't flashy, but he was smart. And more importantly, he was honest. "This is going to be a fight," Theron told me at our first meeting. "Your wife makes significantly more money than you do. In Ohio, that means she might have to pay you spousal support. But her lawyer is going to try to minimize that as much as possible." I didn't care about the money. I just wanted it to be over. I wanted to sign the papers, split our assets, and move on with my life. I was heartbroken, yes. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. The anger came later. It started with a phone call from my friend Stellan, the same friend who had introduced us at that barbecue 9 years ago. He called me on a Tuesday night in late April, and his voice was strange, hesitant, like he knew what he was about to tell me would hurt. "Corbin, I need to ask you something," he said, "and I need you to be honest with me. Is everything okay with you and Marlo financially?" I frowned. "What do you mean? We're getting divorced, Stellan. We're splitting everything. Why?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Because I saw Marlo last weekend, at a restaurant downtown. She was with some guy in a suit, and they were looking at paperwork together. Real estate paperwork. I saw the logo on the folder. It was from that luxury condo development going up by the river." My stomach dropped. "What?" "The condos that start at $500,000, Corbin. She was pointing at floor plans and nodding like she was about to sign something. I tried to get closer to hear what they were saying, but she saw me and her whole face changed. She looked scared. She grabbed her stuff and left in a hurry." I didn't know what to say. Marlo and I had agreed to freeze all major purchases during the divorce. It was standard procedure. Neither of us was supposed to be buying anything significant until the assets were divided. Maybe it was for a client, I said weakly. She works in finance. Maybe she was helping someone else buy property. Maybe, Stellan said, but he didn't sound convinced. Look, I'm not trying to start trouble. I just thought you should know. Something felt off about it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Stellan had said. Marlo looking scared. Marlo leaving in a hurry. Marlo looking at $500,000 condos while telling me during depositions that she barely had any savings because most of her income went to her retirement accounts and our mortgage. The next morning, I did something I had never done in our entire marriage. I went through Marlo's office. She was out of the house. She had been staying at her sister's place since she filed for divorce, only coming back occasionally to pick up clothes and sort through belongings. I knew I shouldn't have been in there. I knew it was probably illegal, or at least ethically wrong. But I couldn't stop myself. Her office was neat, almost too neat. Everything was organized in labeled folders, color-coded and alphabetized. Tax returns, investment statements, insurance documents. I went through them one by one, looking for something, anything, that would explain what Stellan had seen. And then I found it. Hidden behind a row of old textbooks on the top shelf of her bookcase was a small, fireproof lockbox. It was locked, but the key was taped to the bottom. Sloppy, unlike Marlo. Maybe she never expected anyone to look. I opened the box. Inside were 3 things: a passport I had never seen before, a USB drive, and a bank statement. The bank statement was from an institution I had never heard of. Cayman National Trust. The account was in Marlo's name. And the balance, as of March 2023, was $473,000. I sat there on the floor of her office, staring at that number, feeling like the ground had opened up beneath me. $473,000 in an offshore account that she had never mentioned. Not to me, not to the court, not in any of her financial disclosures. Where did this money come from? How long had she been hiding it? And more importantly, was this just the tip of the iceberg? I grabbed the USB drive and plugged it into my laptop. What I found made my blood run cold. There were spreadsheets, dozens of them, detailing transactions going back years, money being moved from account to account, through shell companies with names I didn't recognize, ending up in not 1, not 2, but 3 different offshore accounts. The total across all 3 accounts was staggering. $800,000. My wife, the woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted with my whole heart, had been hiding $800,000 from me, and she had been doing it for years. I felt sick. I felt betrayed. But more than anything, I felt stupid. How had I not seen this? How had I been so blind? I called Theron that night and told him everything. He was silent for a long moment after I finished. "Corbin," he said finally, "if what you're telling me is true, this changes everything. This isn't just hidden assets. This is fraud. This is perjury. Your wife lied under oath in her financial affidavit." "What do we do?" I asked. "We build a case," he said. "We document everything. We hire a forensic accountant. And when we have everything lined up, we present it to the judge. But Corbin, I need you to understand something. This is going to get ugly. Your wife clearly has resources and connections you didn't know about. When she finds out you're onto her, she's going to fight back, hard." I thought about Marlo's smile. That cold, calculating smile I had seen glimpses of over the years but never fully understood. "I don't care," I said. "I want the truth." "Then we're going to find it," Theron said. "I know a private investigator. His name is Briggs Callahan. He's the best in the business. If there's more dirt to find, he'll find it." I hung up the phone and sat in the darkness of my living room. Outside, the crickets were singing. The neighborhood was quiet, normal, peaceful. But my life was about to become anything but. I had no idea that the $800,000 was just the beginning. I had no idea about the man in the suit at the restaurant. I had no idea about the web of lies my wife had spun over the years. And I certainly had no idea that the evidence I would eventually present to Judge Whitmore would lead me somewhere darker and more dangerous than I ever could have imagined. The next morning, I woke up to a text message from a number I didn't recognize. No name, no greeting, just 5 words that made my heart stop. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." I stared at the message, my hands trembling. Someone knew. Someone knew what I had found. And whoever they were watching. I must have read that text message 100 times. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." 5 words. No signature. No explanation. Just a threat hanging in the air like a guillotine blade. My first instinct was to call the police. But what would I tell them? My wife is hiding money, and someone sent me a scary text? They would probably laugh me out of the station. Besides, I didn't know who sent it. It could have been Marlo. It could have been someone working with her. It could have been anyone. I called Theron instead. He answered on the second ring, his voice still groggy with sleep. "Corbin, it's 6 a.m. What's wrong?" I read him the text. There was a long pause on the other end. "Don't respond," he said finally. "Don't delete it either. Screenshot it and send it to me." This could be evidence of witness intimidation. Should I be worried? I asked. My voice sounded small, even to my own ears. Honestly? I don't know yet. It could be a scare tactic, someone trying to spook you into backing off, or it could be something more serious. He paused. "Corbin, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. How much do you really know about your wife's work?" I opened my mouth to respond, then stopped. How much did I know? Marlo worked in finance. She managed accounts. She traveled for work. But beyond that, beyond the surface-level explanations she had given me over the years? Not much, I admitted. She always said it was complicated, that I wouldn't understand. And you never pushed? No, I trusted her. Theron sighed. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to call Briggs Callahan today and get him started. In the meantime, I want you to go about your normal routine. Go to work. Act like nothing has changed. If someone is watching you, we don't want to tip them off that we're investigating. What about Marlo? Should I confront her? Absolutely not. The element of surprise is the only advantage we have right now. If she knows you found those accounts, she'll move the money. She'll cover her tracks. We need to build an airtight case before we show our hand. I agreed. But as I hung up the phone, I felt a heaviness settle in my chest. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. This was something else entirely, something I didn't have a name for yet. I went to work that day like Theron told me to. I taught my classes, Algebra 2 in the morning, pre-calculus after lunch. I stood in front of those kids and talked about equations and variables and the beauty of solving for x. And the whole time, my mind was somewhere else. My mind was on that text message, on those offshore accounts, on the woman I thought I knew. After school, I met Briggs Callahan at a diner on the outskirts of the city. Theron had set up the meeting and told me what to expect. He's not what you'd picture when you think of a private investigator, Theron had said, but don't let that fool you. The man is a bloodhound. He wasn't wrong. Briggs was in his late 50s, with a weathered face and kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He was wearing a flannel shirt and jeans, and he looked more like a retired farmer than a private eye. When I walked in, he was sitting in a corner booth, nursing a cup of black coffee and reading a paperback novel. "Corbin Thatcher?" he asked as I approached. His voice was deep and gravelly, like he had spent too many years smoking cigarettes. That's me. He gestured for me to sit. Theron filled me in on the basics: offshore accounts, hidden assets, threatening text messages. Sounds like your wife has been a busy woman. I slid into the booth across from him. I just want to know the truth. I want to know where that money came from and why she hid it. Briggs nodded slowly. Fair enough. But I need to warn you about something, Corbin. In my experience, when people start digging into hidden money, they usually find more than they bargained for. Are you prepared for that? I thought about his question. Was I prepared? A month ago, I thought I was just getting divorced. I thought my biggest problem was dividing up furniture and figuring out who got to keep the coffee maker. Now I was sitting in a diner with a private investigator, discussing offshore accounts and anonymous threats. I have to know, I said. Whatever it is, I have to know. Briggs studied me for a moment, then nodded. All right. Then let's get started. Tell me everything you know about your wife's work. Every detail, no matter how small. Sometimes the smallest detail is the one that cracks the case wide open. I told him everything I could remember. The name of her firm, the clients she mentioned, the business trips she took, the late nights, the locked office door, the way she got defensive whenever I asked too many questions about money. Briggs listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes in a small leather notebook. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. The firm she works for, he said finally. Harmon and Associates. I know them. They're legitimate, as far as I can tell. Mid-sized. Good reputation. But here's the thing about financial firms, Corbin. They handle a lot of money. And where there's a lot of money, there's always opportunity for someone to skim a little off the top. You think Marlowe was stealing from her clients? I don't think anything yet. I'm just laying out possibilities. Could be embezzlement, could be money laundering, could be something else entirely. That's what I need to find out. He closed his notebook and looked me in the eye. I'm going to need a few weeks, maybe longer. I'll start by pulling public records, looking into her business associations, tracking any unusual transactions. In the meantime, you need to keep your head down. No more snooping through her office, no confrontations. And if you get any more threatening messages, you call me immediately. Understood? I nodded. Understood. He slid a business card across the table. My cell number, day or night. You think of anything else, you let me know. I took the card and shook his hand. As I walked out of the diner, I felt something I hadn't felt since this whole nightmare began. Hope. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I went through the motions of my daily routine, but every moment felt like I was holding my breath, waiting for something to happen. Waiting for Briggs to call. Waiting for another threatening text. Waiting for Marlowe to find out what I knew. She came by the house once during that time to pick up some boxes she had left in the garage. I watched her from the kitchen window as she loaded them into her car. She looked different, thinner, tired. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her movements were jerky and rushed. Part of me wanted to go outside and talk to her. Part of me wanted to ask her why she had done this, why she had lied, why she had destroyed everything we built together. But I stayed inside. I kept my mouth shut. I played the role Theron and Briggs had given me. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. On the 15th day, Briggs called. I was sitting in my classroom, grading papers, when my phone buzzed. I saw his name on the screen and my heart jumped into my throat. Briggs, did you find something? I found a lot of things, he said. His voice was serious. Can you meet me tonight? Same diner? 8 o'clock. I'll be there. I couldn't focus for the rest of the day. I gave my students a study period and sat at my desk, staring at the clock, counting down the minutes until 8 o'clock. By the time I walked into that diner, I was practically vibrating with anticipation. Briggs was already there, sitting in the same corner booth. But this time, he wasn't reading a book. He had a thick folder on the table in front of him, and his expression was grim. "Sit down, Corbin," he said. "We need to talk." I slid into the booth, my eyes fixed on the folder. "What did you find?" He opened the folder and spread out a series of photographs and documents. "Let's start with the basics. Your wife has been moving money through a series of shell companies for the past 4 years. The money originates from client accounts at Harmon and Associates, gets funneled through companies registered in Delaware and Nevada, and ends up in those offshore accounts you found. So she was embezzling." "Yes, but here's where it gets complicated." He tapped one of the photographs. "Recognize this man?" I looked at the photo. It showed Marlowe sitting at a restaurant table with a man in an expensive suit. He was older, maybe mid-60s, with silver hair and a commanding presence. They were leaning close together, talking intently. "That's the guy Stellan saw her with," I said. "The one looking at real estate." Briggs nodded. "His name is Wendell Ashworth. He's a managing partner at Harmon and Associates, also happens to be Marlowe's direct supervisor." I felt my stomach drop. "They're working together?" "It looks that way, but there's more." He pulled out another photograph. This one made my blood run cold. It showed Marlowe and Wendell again, but they weren't looking at real estate this time. They were walking out of a hotel together. His arm was around her waist. She was looking up at him with a smile I recognized. It was the smile she used to give me. "How long?" I heard myself ask. My voice sounded like it was coming from far away. "Based on what I've found? At least 3 years? Maybe longer." 3 years. She had been cheating on me for 3 years, while we slept in the same bed, while we ate dinner together, while she told me she loved me and kissed me goodnight. I felt something break inside me. Not my heart. That had already been broken when she asked for the divorce. This was something deeper. This was my ability to believe anything anymore. "There's one more thing," Briggs said. He reached into the folder and pulled out a document. "This is a purchase agreement for a condo at that development by the river, the one your friend told you about. It's in Marlowe's name, but the money used for the down payment came from one of those offshore accounts." "She bought the condo?" "She closed on it last week, $480,000, paid in cash." He paused. "Corbin, I think she's planning to disappear. Move the rest of the money, liquidate her assets here, and start over somewhere else, somewhere you can't find her." I sat there, staring at the photograph of my wife with another man, trying to process what Briggs was telling me. She wasn't just hiding money. She wasn't just cheating. She was planning to run, to take everything and vanish. "What do we do?" I asked. "We move fast," Briggs said. "I'm going to keep digging. There's something else going on here, something bigger than just embezzlement and an affair. I can feel it. But in the meantime, Theron needs to file a motion with the court. We need to freeze her assets before she can move them." "Will the judge do that? With the evidence we have?" "I think so. But we need to be careful. Wendell Ashworth is a powerful man. He has connections. If he finds out we're onto them, things could get dangerous." He looked at me with those kind, crinkled eyes. "You might want to consider staying somewhere else for a while, just to be safe." I nodded, but I wasn't really listening anymore. I was thinking about the text message. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." Was that from Marlowe? From Wendell? From someone else entirely? I drove home that night in a daze. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed something strange. The garage door was open. I always closed it. Always. I parked on the street and sat in my car for a long moment, staring at that open garage door. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. Every instinct told me to drive away, to call Briggs, to call the police. But I didn't. I got out of the car and walked toward the garage. The inside was dark. I reached for the light switch and flipped it on. The garage was empty. No, not empty. Different. Everything had been moved. Boxes that used to be stacked against the wall were now scattered across the floor. Shelves had been pulled down. It looked like someone had been searching for something. And then I saw it. On the concrete floor, written in what looked like red spray paint, was a message. Last warning. I stumbled backward, my heart slamming against my ribs. Someone had been in my house, someone had gone through my things, and that someone wanted me to stop. I fumbled for my phone and dialed Briggs with trembling fingers. He answered on the first ring. "Briggs, someone broke into my house. They left a message. Corbin, slow down. Where are you right now?" "In my garage. They wrote 'Last warning' on the floor. In red paint. At least I think it's paint." There was a pause. "Get out of the house, now. Go to a public place and wait for me. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I ran. I ran to my car and drove without thinking, without planning, just driving. I ended up at a 24-hour gas station about a mile from my neighborhood. I parked under the bright fluorescent lights and sat there, shaking, trying to understand what was happening to my life. Who were these people? What were they capable of? And what had Marlowe gotten herself into? Briggs arrived in a beat-up pickup truck. He got out and walked over to my car, his face set in hard lines. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I admitted. "I'm not okay. Someone broke into my house, Briggs. Someone is threatening me, over money, over a divorce." He leaned against my car door and looked up at the sky. "I don't think this is just about the money anymore, Corbin. I've been doing some more digging on Wendell Ashworth. The man has a record. Nothing major, nothing that stuck. But there were accusations years ago. Fraud, intimidation, witness tampering." "Witness tampering?" A former employee at Harmon & Associates was going to testify against him in a civil suit. She backed out at the last minute, refused to say why. The case was dismissed. He looked at me. "Wendell Ashworth is not someone you want to cross, and somehow your wife got tangled up with him." I thought about the woman I married, the woman who laughed at my bad jokes and held my hand during movies, the woman who said she wanted to grow old with me. How had she become this? How had I missed all the signs? "What do we do now?" I asked. "Now," Briggs said, "we go to war. But first we need to get you somewhere safe. You have any family you can stay with? Anyone Marlowe doesn't know about?" I thought for a moment. "My brother, Oswin. He lives in Cleveland. Marlowe never liked him. She hasn't spoken to him in years. Perfect. Pack a bag tomorrow and go stay with him. I'll keep investigating. Theron will file the motion, and when we have everything we need, we'll bring it all to the judge." He put a hand on my shoulder. "This is going to end, Corbin. I promise. But it's going to get worse before it gets better." I looked at him, this stranger who had become one of the few people I trusted in the world. "How much worse?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just looked away, and in his silence, I heard everything I needed to know. The next morning, I packed a bag and drove to Cleveland. Oswin welcomed me without asking too many questions. He could see it in my face. Whatever I was going through, it was bad. I spent the next few weeks in his spare bedroom, waiting for news. Theron called with updates. The motion to freeze assets had been filed. A hearing was scheduled. We were getting closer, and then, 3 days before the hearing, I got a call that changed everything. It was Briggs. His voice was strange, excited and worried at the same time. "Corbin, I found something big. The money Marlowe's been hiding, it's not just embezzlement. It's connected to something else, something federal." "Federal? What do you mean?" "I mean the FBI has had Wendell Ashworth under investigation for 2 years. Money laundering, fraud. And your wife?" She's right in the middle of it. She's not just his accomplice, Corbin. She's his accountant. She's been cooking the books for half a dozen companies tied to organized crime. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. Organized crime. My wife. The woman I had shared a bed with for 7 years. There's more, Briggs continued. I have a contact at the Bureau. He told me they're about to move. They're going to arrest Wendell within the month. And when they do, Marlowe is going down with him. I sat there in stunned silence. My wife wasn't just a cheater and a thief. She was a criminal, a real criminal, connected to people who would break into my house and leave threatening messages. What do? I whispered. You go to that hearing, Briggs said. You present the evidence we've gathered. You let Judge Whitmore see exactly who Marlowe Thatcher really is, and then you let the chips fall where they may. 3 days. In 3 days, I would stand in front of a judge and expose everything. I just had to survive until then. But on the night before the hearing, I got one more message. Not a text this time. A voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. The voice was Marlowe's. Corbin, I know what you're planning. I know about Briggs. I know about the hearing. And I'm begging you, please, don't do this. You don't understand what's at stake. If you go through with this, people will get hurt. People you care about. Just walk away. Please, for both of our sakes. Her voice cracked at the end. She sounded scared. Genuinely scared. I lay awake all night, listening to that voicemail over and over, trying to understand what she meant. People will get hurt. People you care about. Was she threatening me? Warning me? Both? I didn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. And when morning came, I got in my car and drove to the courthouse, not knowing if I was making the bravest decision of my life or the most dangerous one. All I knew was that there was no turning back now. The drive to the courthouse felt like the longest journey of my life. Every red light, every slow driver, every minute that ticked by on the dashboard clock felt like an eternity. I kept Marlowe's voicemail playing on a loop in my head. People will get hurt. People you care about. What did that mean? Who was she talking about? I pulled into the courthouse parking lot at 8:45. The hearing was scheduled for 9. Theron was already waiting for me on the steps, his briefcase in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. He looked calm, confident, like this was just another day at the office. For me, it felt like walking into a war zone. You ready? He asked as I approached. No, I said honestly, but I don't think I have a choice. He nodded and handed me the coffee. Drink this. You look like you haven't slept in days. I hadn't, but I took the coffee anyway and followed him inside. The courthouse was busy that morning. Lawyers in suits rushing down hallways, families waiting on benches with nervous expressions, security guards standing by metal detectors, looking bored. It was strange to think that for everyone else, this was just an ordinary Tuesday. For me, it was the day my entire life would change. We made our way to Courtroom 4 on the second floor. Outside the doors, I saw Desdemona Vance, Marlowe's attorney, talking on her cell phone. She glanced up as we approached, and her eyes narrowed. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know what. Mr. Thatcher, she said coolly, ending her call, I hear you have some sort of surprise planned for today. I hope you know what you're doing. I didn't respond. I just walked past her and into the courtroom. Marlowe was already seated at the defendant's table. She looked different than the last time I had seen her. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun. Her makeup was minimal. She was wearing a conservative gray suit that made her look smaller somehow, more vulnerable. When she saw me, something flickered in her eyes. Fear? Regret? I couldn't tell anymore. I had spent 7 years thinking I could read this woman like a book, and now I realized I had never known her at all. I took my seat next to Theron and waited. Judge Whitmore entered at exactly 9 o'clock. Everyone rose. She took her seat at the bench and surveyed the courtroom with those sharp, intelligent eyes. "This hearing concerns the matter of Thatcher versus Thatcher," she said. "I understand the petitioner has new evidence to present. Mr. Blackwell, you may proceed." Theron stood. "Thank you, Your Honor. My client has discovered significant assets that were not disclosed in the respondent's financial affidavit. We believe this constitutes fraud and perjury, and we request that these assets be immediately frozen pending further investigation." Desdemona was on her feet instantly. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. My client has fully complied with all discovery requirements. We have no knowledge of any undisclosed assets." "Then you won't mind if we present our evidence," Theron said calmly. He turned to me. "Mr. Thatcher, please approach the bench." This was it. The moment I had been preparing for. The moment that would change everything. I stood on legs that felt like jelly and walked toward the judge. In my hands was the manila folder containing everything Briggs and I had gathered. Bank statements, transaction records, photographs, shell company registrations, everything. I handed the folder to Judge Whitmore. She opened it and began to read. The courtroom was silent. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I could feel Marlowe's eyes on me, burning with an intensity I had never felt before. And then I saw the judge's face change. Her eyebrows rose, her jaw tightened. She looked up at Marlowe, then back at the documents, then up at Marlowe again. And in that moment, I knew she understood. She understood exactly what my wife had done. "Mrs. Thatcher," she said, and her voice was like ice. "Would you care to explain why you have 3 offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands that were not disclosed in your financial affidavit?" That's when Marlowe smiled. That cold, calculating smile that I had seen in the courtroom on that first day. But this time, it didn't last. This time the smile faltered, cracked, and then it was gone, replaced by something else. Desperation. She stood up slowly, ignoring Desdemona's frantic whispers to remain seated. "Your Honor, I can explain." "I certainly hope so," Judge Whitmore said, "because what I'm looking at here appears to be a systematic effort to hide nearly $800,000 in assets. That is a serious matter, Mrs. Thatcher, a very serious matter indeed." Marlowe's hands were trembling. I could see them shaking even from across the room. "The money isn't mine," she said. "Not really. I was holding it for someone else. I was forced to—" "Marlowe, don't!" Desdemona hissed, grabbing her arm. But Marlowe shook her off. "I have to," she said, her voice cracked. "I can't do this anymore. I can't keep lying." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Whitmore banged her gavel. "Order! Order in the court!" She fixed Marlowe with a stern gaze. "Mrs. Thatcher, are you saying that you did in fact hide these assets?" Marlowe closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were wet with tears. "Yes, Your Honor. I hid the money. But you have to understand, I didn't have a choice. Wendell, he made me do it. He said if I didn't help him, he would destroy me. He would destroy Corbin. He would destroy everything." I felt the blood drain from my face. She was throwing Wendell under the bus, right here, in open court. With everything Briggs had told me about the FBI investigation, about the organized crime connections, about the kind of man Wendell Ashworth really was, this was either the bravest thing I had ever seen or the most foolish. Judge Whitmore leaned forward. "Who is Wendell?" "Wendell Ashworth," Marlowe said. "He's a managing partner at my firm. He's been laundering money for years, using client accounts, shell companies, offshore banks. I found out about it 3 years ago, and he threatened me. He said if I didn't help him, he would frame me for everything. He would make sure I went to prison. So I did what he asked. I moved the money. I cooked the books. I became part of it." Desdemona looked like she was about to have a heart attack. Your Honor, I request a recess. My client clearly needs— Denied, Judge Whitmore said. Mrs. Thatcher? Continue. Marlowe wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. The money in those offshore accounts, most of it belongs to Wendell. He was using my name as a cover. He said it was safer that way, that no one would suspect a low-level analyst. When I filed for divorce, I panicked. I knew Corbin would find out. I knew everything would come crashing down, so I tried to hide it. I tried to make it disappear before anyone could trace it back to me. And the threats? Judge Whitmore asked. The break-in at Mr. Thatcher's residence? The intimidating messages? Were those Wendell's doing as well? Marlowe nodded. He has people. People who do things for him. When he found out Corbin was investigating, he told me to handle it. He said if I couldn't keep my husband under control, he would do it himself. I tried to warn Corbin. I called him last night and begged him not to come here today. I knew what Wendell would do if this went public. I stared at my wife, trying to reconcile the woman in front of me with the woman I had loved. She was a victim. She was a criminal. She was both. Neither. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Your Honor, Theron said, stepping forward. If what Mrs. Thatcher is saying is true, then this matter extends far beyond a simple divorce proceeding. This is a criminal matter. We may need to involve federal authorities. Judge Whitmore nodded slowly. I agree. This court will recess for 1 hour while I consult with the appropriate agencies. In the meantime, Mrs. Thatcher, you are not to leave this building. Is that understood? Yes, Your Honor, Marlowe whispered. The judge banged her gavel. Court is in recess. The next hour was chaos. Theron pulled me into a side room and explained what was happening. The judge was contacting the FBI. Briggs's information about the ongoing investigation had been confirmed. Within the hour, federal agents would be arriving at the courthouse to take Marlowe into custody. Is she going to prison? I asked. Almost certainly, Theron said. But if she cooperates, if she testifies against Wendell, she might be able to negotiate a reduced sentence. It depends on how much she knows and how much she's willing to share. I sat down heavily on a wooden bench. My head was spinning. This morning I had walked into this courthouse expecting a divorce hearing. Now I was in the middle of a federal investigation into organized crime. It was surreal, like something out of a movie. There's something else, Theron said. He hesitated, like he wasn't sure he should continue. Briggs called while we were in the courtroom. He found something new. What? The condo. The one Marlowe bought with the offshore money. It's not in her name anymore. She transferred ownership last week. To who? Theron took a deep breath. To you, Corbin. She put the condo in your name. I stared at him, not understanding. Why would she do that? I don't know. Maybe she was planning to use it as leverage. Maybe she was trying to implicate you in the money laundering. Or maybe— He trailed off. Maybe what? Maybe she was trying to protect you. If Wendell goes down, all his assets will be seized. But if the condo is in your name, if there's no direct link between it and the dirty money, you might be able to keep it. I thought about Marlowe's voicemail. People will get hurt. People you care about. Was this what she meant? Was she trying to give me something even as everything fell apart? Before I could process any of this, the door to the side room burst open. A man in a dark suit stepped inside. He had a badge clipped to his belt and a hard expression on his face. Corbin Thatcher? He asked. Yes? I'm Special Agent Morrison with the FBI. I need to ask you some questions. The next 3 hours were a blur. Agent Morrison and his partner, a woman named Chen, interrogated me in a small room at the federal building downtown. They wanted to know everything. How I had discovered the offshore accounts, what I knew about Marlowe's work, whether I had any involvement in the money laundering scheme. I told them the truth. All of it, about Briggs, about the threatening messages, about the break-in, about everything that had happened since I found that lockbox in Marlowe's office. They listened without interrupting. When I finished, Agent Morrison leaned back in his chair and studied me for a long moment. "Mr. Thatcher, I'm going to be straight with you. Your wife is in serious trouble. The evidence we have against Wendell Ashworth is substantial, and your wife's testimony could be the key to putting him away for a very long time. But in order for that to happen, she needs to cooperate fully. And right now, she's not talking." "What do you mean?" "I mean she's refused to say another word since we took her into custody. She asked for a lawyer and clammed up. We think she's scared. Scared of what Wendell might do if she testifies against him." I thought about the man in the photographs, the silver hair, the commanding presence, the history of witness intimidation that Briggs had uncovered. Of course she was scared. Anyone would be scared. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. Agent Morrison exchanged a glance with Agent Chen. "We want you to talk to her, off the record. She might open up to you in a way she won't open up to us." "Why would she talk to me? I'm the one who exposed her." "Maybe, but you're also the one person in the world she might still trust. She tried to warn you last night. She transferred that condo into your name. Whatever else she's done, it's clear she still cares about you on some level." I didn't know what to say. The woman who had lied to me. The woman who had cheated on me. The woman who had hidden $800,000 and gotten tangled up with criminals. Did I want to help her? Did she deserve my help? I thought about the early years of our marriage. The road trips, the Sunday dinners, the way she used to fall asleep with her head on my shoulder while we watched old movies. That woman was still in there somewhere. Buried under years of lies and bad decisions, but still there. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll talk to her." They brought me to a holding room in the basement of the Federal Building. Marlowe was sitting at a metal table, her hands folded in front of her. When she saw me walk in, something shifted in her face. Relief? Guilt? Hope? I sat down across from her. The door closed behind me. We were alone. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We just looked at each other. This woman I had married and this stranger I had discovered. "You came," she said finally. Her voice was hoarse. "The FBI asked me to." She nodded, like she had expected that. "They want me to testify against Wendell." "Will you?" She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "Corbin, there are things I haven't told anyone. Things that would put people in danger. Not just me, not just you, other people, innocent people." "What kind of things?" She looked up at me, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw the woman I had fallen in love with. The woman who laughed at bad jokes and cried at happy endings. The woman who promised to love me forever. "Wendell isn't just laundering money," she said. "He's connected to people, powerful people, people who make problems disappear. And I know things, Corbin. I know where the bodies are buried, literally." My blood ran cold. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if I testify, they will kill me, and they will kill anyone I care about." She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "That's why I tried to warn you. That's why I transferred the condo. I was trying to give you something. A fresh start. Away from all of this." "Marlowe, you have to tell the FBI. They can protect you." She laughed bitterly. "Protect me? From these people? Corbin, you don't understand. Wendell has contacts everywhere. In the police, in the courts, maybe even in the FBI. There is no safe place. There is no protection." I looked at her, this woman who had destroyed our marriage but was now asking me to trust her. And despite everything, despite all the lies and the betrayal, I believed her. I believed she was scared. And I believed she was telling the truth. "Then what do we do?" I asked. Before she could answer, the door burst open. Agent Morrison rushed in, his face pale. "Mr. Thatcher, we need to get you out of here. Now!" "What's happening?" Wendell Ashworth was arrested 30 minutes ago at his office, but when our agents went to secure his residence, they found something. He paused, his jaw tight. A hit list. Names and addresses of everyone involved in this case. Your name was on it, Mr. Thatcher. And so was your brother's. Oswin. The room tilted. Oswin, who had taken me in without asking questions. Oswin, who was sitting in his house in Cleveland right now, completely unaware that his life was in danger. We've already dispatched agents to Cleveland, Morrison continued. But we need to move you to a secure location until this is over. Both of you. He looked at Marlowe. Are you ready to cooperate now, Mrs. Thatcher? Marlowe looked at me. I saw the fear in her eyes, but I also saw something else. Determination. Yes, she said. I'll tell you everything. But first you have to promise me something. What? Protect my husband. Whatever happens to me, protect him. Morrison nodded. You have my word. As they led us out of the building through a back entrance, I felt Marlowe's hand slip into mine. It was strange. Wrong. After everything she had done, I should have pulled away. But I didn't. Because despite everything, we were still in this together. And as we climbed into the back of a black SUV with tinted windows, I realized that this nightmare was far from over. The evidence, the trial, the people who wanted us dead, it was all just beginning. The SUV pulled away from the curb and merged into traffic. Marlowe squeezed my hand and whispered something so quiet I almost didn't hear it. I'm sorry, Corbin. For everything. I looked at her. This woman I had loved and lost and found again in the strangest of circumstances. I know, I said. Me too. We drove in silence for 10 minutes before Morrison's phone rang. He answered it, listened for a moment, and then his face went white. What is it? I asked. He turned around to look at us, and the fear in his eyes sent ice through my veins. Cleveland, he said. We were too late. Someone got to your brother's house before our agents arrived. Oswin is gone. The world stopped. Everything around me went silent. Morrison was still talking, his lips moving, but I couldn't hear the words. All I could hear was my own heartbeat, pounding in my ears like a drum. Oswin, my brother, my only family, gone. Marlowe's grip on my hand tightened. Corbin, look at me. I turned to her, but I couldn't focus. My vision was blurring. My chest was tight. I felt like I was drowning. This is my fault, I whispered. I brought him into this. I stayed at his house. I led them right to him. No, Marlowe said firmly. This is Wendell's fault. This is my fault, not yours. Never yours. Morrison was barking orders into his phone. Something about roadblocks. Something about helicopter surveillance. Something about tracking cell phone signals. But none of it mattered. None of it would bring Oswin back. Where would they take him? I asked, my voice cracking. If Wendell wanted someone to disappear, where would they go? Morrison shook his head. We don't know yet. We're pulling all of Ashworth's known associates, tracking their movements. But these people are professionals. They know how to stay hidden. Marlowe. I turned to her, grabbing her shoulders. You said you know where the bodies are buried. You said you know things. If there's anything at all that could help us find Oswin, you have to tell them now. She was pale, trembling, but she nodded. There's a warehouse, on the east side of Cleveland, near the docks. Wendell owns it through one of his shell companies. He uses it for meetings. Private meetings. What kind of meetings? Morrison demanded. Marlowe swallowed hard. The kind where people go in but don't come out. Morrison was on his phone again instantly, relaying the information to his team. The SUV changed direction, heading north toward Cleveland. We were 2 hours away. 2 hours that could mean the difference between life and death for my brother. I sat back in my seat and stared out the window at the passing landscape. Farms, highways, small towns with church steeples and water towers. Normal places where normal people lived normal lives. I used to be one of them. A math teacher with a nice house and a loving wife. Now I was racing toward a warehouse where criminals might be holding my brother hostage. Or worse. Marlo leaned her head against my shoulder. I tensed at first, then relaxed. Whatever had happened between us, whatever she had done, she was the only person in the world who understood what I was going through right now. She was the only one who could help me get Oswin back. "Tell me about him," she said quietly. "Your brother. I never really got to know him." I thought about Oswin, 3 years older than me, stubborn, loyal, the kind of guy who would give you the shirt off his back and then apologize for it being wrinkled. He had been there for me after our parents died. He had been there for me when I was struggling through college. He had been there for me when Marlo asked for the divorce. And now, because of me, he was in danger. "He's the best person I know," I said. "He doesn't deserve any of this." "Neither do you," Marlo whispered. We drove in tense silence for the next hour. Morrison was on his phone constantly, coordinating with agents on the ground in Cleveland. A tactical team had been dispatched to the warehouse. Surveillance drones were in the air. Everything that could be done was being done. But it still didn't feel like enough. As we crossed the state line into Ohio, Morrison's phone rang again. He answered it, listened for a moment, and then turned to us with a strange expression on his face. "They found him," he said. My heart leaped. "Is he alive?" "He's alive. They pulled him out of the warehouse 10 minutes ago. 2 men were holding him. They've been arrested." I felt tears streaming down my face. Relief flooded through me like a wave. Oswin was alive. My brother was alive. "There's more," Morrison continued. "The men we arrested, they're talking, trying to cut deals. They're giving us everything. Names, locations, account numbers. The whole operation is unraveling." Marlo let out a shaky breath. "Wendell? Still in custody. But with what we're getting from these guys, he's never seeing the outside of a prison cell again. Neither are his associates." Morrison paused. "You did good, Mrs. Thatcher. The information you gave us about that warehouse, it saved a man's life." Marlo didn't respond. She just closed her eyes and leaned back against the seat, her whole body trembling. We arrived at the FBI field office in Cleveland just after 6 in the evening. Oswin was there, sitting in a conference room with a blanket around his shoulders and a cup of coffee in his hands. When he saw me walk through the door, he stood up so fast he knocked over his chair. "Corbin!" I crossed the room in 3 steps and pulled him into a hug. He was shaking. Or maybe I was shaking. Maybe we both were. "I'm sorry," I said into his shoulder. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." "Hey," Oswin said, pulling back to look at me. "I'm okay. I'm right here. It's over." But it wasn't over. Not yet. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of depositions, interviews, and court appearances. Marlo testified against Wendell Ashworth in exchange for a reduced sentence. She stood in front of a federal judge and laid out everything: the money laundering, the shell companies, the offshore accounts, the threats, the intimidation, everything. Wendell tried to stare her down from across the courtroom. That same commanding presence, that same silver hair. But Marlo didn't flinch. She looked him dead in the eye and told the truth. When it was over, Wendell Ashworth was sentenced to 45 years in federal prison. His assets were seized. His criminal empire was dismantled. The people who had threatened me, who had broken into my house, who had kidnapped my brother, they were all going away for a very long time. As for Marlo, She received a sentence of 5 years. The judge took into account her cooperation, her testimony, and the fact that she had been coerced into the scheme by Wendell's threats. It wasn't nothing. 5 years is a long time, but it was far less than she could have gotten. On the day of her sentencing, I went to the courthouse. I didn't have to. Our divorce had been finalized weeks earlier. I owed her nothing, but I went anyway. She was wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed in front of her. When she saw me in the gallery, something shifted in her face. Surprise, gratitude, sadness. After the judge announced the sentence and the guards began to lead her away, she turned and looked at me one last time. "Thank you," she mouthed. I nodded. I didn't know what else to do. And then she was gone. The months that followed were strange, quiet. I went back to teaching, but everything felt different. The halls of the high school that had once felt so familiar now seemed like a foreign country. My colleagues looked at me differently, some with pity, some with curiosity. Everyone had read about the case in the newspapers. Everyone knew what had happened. I sold the house in Columbus. Too many memories, too many ghosts. I couldn't sleep in the bedroom I had shared with Marlo. I couldn't cook in the kitchen where we had made Sunday dinners. Every corner of that house reminded me of a life that no longer existed. The condo by the river, the one Marlo had transferred into my name, was a different story. The FBI had investigated it thoroughly. They determined that while the down payment had come from questionable sources, the transfer to me had been done legally. There was no evidence that I had any knowledge of the money's origins. After months of legal wrangling, the property was cleared. I didn't know what to do with it at first. It felt wrong to keep something that had been bought with dirty money. But Theron convinced me to look at it differently. "That condo is the one good thing that came out of this mess," he said. "Marlo gave it to you because she wanted you to have a fresh start. Maybe you should take it." So I did. I moved into the condo in the spring, right as the trees along the river were starting to bloom. It was smaller than the house, but it felt right, clean, unburdened by the past. I started over. I joined a gym. I started cooking again. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during the years of my marriage. Slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild my life. Oswin came to visit often. He never blamed me for what happened, even though I still blamed myself. We would sit on my balcony overlooking the river, drinking beer and talking about nothing in particular. It was good. It was healing. One evening, about 8 months after everything had ended, I got a letter. It was from the federal prison where Marlo was serving her sentence. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. The letter was short, handwritten. Her handwriting was the same as it had always been, neat and precise. "Dear Corbin, I know I don't have the right to write to you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I wanted you to know that I think about you every day. I think about the life we had, and the life we could have had if I had made different choices. I was scared. That's not an excuse, but it's the truth. When Wendell first approached me, I thought I could handle it. I thought I could play along, take the money, and get out before anyone got hurt. But it doesn't work that way. Once you're in, you're in. And by the time I realized how deep I had gotten, it was too late. I should have told you. I should have trusted you. You were always the best part of my life, and I threw that away because I was too proud and too scared to ask for help. I don't expect you to write back. I don't expect anything from you. But I hope you're happy. I hope you've found peace. I hope you've built a life that makes you smile. You deserve that, Corbin. You always did. With love, Marlo." I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. I didn't write back. Not because I was angry, not because I hadn't forgiven her. I had, in my own way. But that chapter of my life was closed. Responding would only reopen wounds that were finally starting to heal. A year passed, then 2. I kept teaching. I got promoted to department head. I started dating again, cautiously, carefully. I met a woman named Della at a bookstore downtown. She was a librarian with kind eyes and a dry sense of humor. She knew about my past. Everyone did. But she didn't treat me like damaged goods. She treated me like a person worth knowing. On the 2nd anniversary of that day in the courtroom, the day I had stood before Judge Whitmore with a manila folder in my shaking hands, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I visited Briggs Callahan. He had retired from private investigation the year before. "Health problems," he said. "Too many years of bad coffee and late nights." He was living in a small house outside the city, tending a vegetable garden and reading paperback novels. We sat on his porch and watched the sun set over the cornfields. He looked older, thinner, but those kind eyes still crinkled when he smiled. "You doing okay, Corbin?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." "Good, that's good." He took a sip of his lemonade. "You know, in all my years as an investigator, I never had a case quite like yours. Most people, when they find out their spouse is hiding something, they fall apart. They get angry, they get bitter, they spend the rest of their lives looking for someone to blame." "I was angry," I admitted. "For a long time." "Sure, but you didn't let it consume you. You did the right thing, even when it was hard, even when it was dangerous. That takes a special kind of courage." I thought about his words. Courage. I had never thought of myself as courageous. I was just a math teacher from Columbus who got caught up in something bigger than himself. But maybe that was what courage really was. Not the absence of fear, but the willingness to do the right thing despite it. "Whatever happened to Judge Whitmore?" I asked. "I heard she retired." Briggs chuckled. "She did. Moved to Florida. I ran into her at a coffee shop about 6 months ago. She remembered your case, said it was one of the most dramatic things she'd ever seen in her courtroom. The look on her face when you handed her that folder." He shook his head. "That's something I'll never forget." Neither would I. As I drove home that evening, I thought about everything that had happened. The lies, the betrayal, the fear, the danger. And somehow, through all of it, I had come out the other side. Scarred, yes. Changed, definitely. But alive, and maybe even stronger than before. My phone buzzed. A text from Della. "Dinner at my place tonight? I'm making lasagna." I smiled and typed back. "On my way." The sun was setting over the city as I pulled into Della's neighborhood. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the air smelled like summer, like possibility, like a fresh start. I parked my car and walked up to her front door. Before I could knock, she opened it, smiling that smile that had made me fall for her in the first place. "You're early," she said. "I couldn't wait." She laughed and pulled me inside, and as the door closed behind me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. I felt home. And as I sat down at her kitchen table, watching her move around the stove, humming softly to herself, I made a decision. I was done looking backward, done dwelling on the past, done letting the ghosts of my failed marriage haunt me. Marlo had hidden $800,000. She had lied to me, cheated on me, and nearly destroyed my life. And when I had stood in that courtroom with the evidence in my hands, when I had seen the look on Judge Whitmore's face, I had thought that moment would define me forever. But it didn't. What defined me was what came after. The rebuilding, the healing, the courage to trust again, to love again, to believe that the future could be better than the past. That's the thing about rock bottom. Once you've been there, the only way left to go is up. And I was going up, one day at a time,